Hi, welcome back to RossyRoo's Gaming News, and just in case you've been at sea raiding the English countryside from your longship, here's what you missed in games last week. Wait, what's that sound? Beans, the game industry has another leak. Somebody probably needs to look into that. Last week, Nintendo was the victim of a recent source code leak to the website 4chan, and no, it wasn't actually for any upcoming releases. Nintendo's legacy consoles, such as the N64, GameCube, and Wii, have had over 2 terabytes of source code leaked onto the internet, as well as some early documentation on how some console features such as the DS's dual screen would be implemented. Early demo reels showcasing how the consoles would function were also released, as well as evidence of an abandoned project called Pokemon Pink, which data miners believe could be a companion project for the classics Red and Blue. There were also some PowerPoint presentations by Nintendo explaining why they used some of their features that fans didn't like, which I found really interesting, such as their numerical friend codes, which they explain are used for security reasons, although the vast majority of fans have expressed interest in using gamer tags instead. The data supposedly originated from a server hack of the company Broadon, a company contracted to work on the hardware and software for the Wii. And this is all more than a harmless, albeit bizarre glance into a Nintendo time capsule. Some of this data could potentially harm Nintendo, especially concerning its re-release and porting market. Just this year, Nintendo announced that it was planning on porting old Mario classics such as Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Galaxy for the Switch to celebrate Mario's 35th birthday. With such an old and popular collection of franchises, of course Nintendo would be interested in keeping its old secrets secret. And because people have access to this old source code, these games can now be emulated perfectly. Emulation has been done for years, but the big difference with this leak is that coders can now use this information to specially rig consoles to play these hacked games. Personally, I don't know if there's anything that would make me feel dirtier than buying a hacked DS to play my copy of Bowser's Inside Story, but where there's a will, there's a way. This next story is one that I've been following for a few weeks, and it concerns Doom soundtrack composer Mick Gordon and his apparent lack of work on Doom Eternal's actual soundtrack. Now that Gordon and ID Software executive director Marty Stratton have both had a chance to speak on the matter, it seems like everything's been left on the table. On April 19th, Mick Gordon was weirdly called out on Twitter by an audio engineer who was looking at the waveforms in Doom's soundtrack compared to Doom 2016. Essentially, he found that the mix of Doom Eternal compared to Doom 2016 had very little dynamic range, meaning that the instrument mix was muddy and everything was competing with each other too much, and it generally didn't have as many peaks and valleys and wasn't as interesting. However, Mick denied responsibility for this on Twitter, claiming that he only mixed a few of the tracks. In a conversation with a fan posted to the Doom subreddit, Gordon states that he doubts that he'll ever work with ID Software on a project again. Well, last Monday, executive producer of Doom, Marty Stratton, fired back on the subreddit with an extensive letter concerning the events. It's a long read, but basically, Mick Gordon was not meeting the deadlines for Doom Eternal's soundtrack production. This resulted in ID Software and Gordon parting ways, leaving it to the game's lead audio engineer to finish the production, who, for obvious reasons, wouldn't be as familiar with the actual musical material of the soundtrack. Stratton also claims rumors that Gordon did not receive full musical autonomy for the production of the soundtrack were untrue. This story was really one that just sort of bummed me out. I played Doom Eternal, I love the soundtrack. I watched Mick Gordon's talk at GDC a couple years back about his work on Doom 2016 soundtrack, and he's truly a very inspirational and talented composer, and I hope that he continues to do good work wherever he goes. But the bottom line is, if you can't meet your deadlines and finish the soundtrack, you're really throwing the rest of your team under the bus. In other news, meanwhile, elsewhere, coronavirus is still a thing. The coronavirus has not only threatened the prospects of many businesses in the game industry, such as GameStop, but also some events. With E3 canceled, Geoff Keighley, the executive producer of the Game Awards, has announced an extended virtual game event called Summer Game Fest. Instead of E3, which is a 3 to 5 day in-person event, Summer Game Fest is intended to span from May all the way to August and is intended as a way for publishers and developers to keep everybody informed and excited. This is really just a good thing, because with E3 canceled, publishers and developers needed a way to showcase their projects, and many events scheduled at E3 overlap each other anyways, so a lot of people can't see everything, and a lot of game industry people don't like the hassle of going anyways. Some of the companies who plan on being at Summer Game Fest are Activision, Bethesda, Blizzard, PlayStation, Xbox, and many others. So I guess props to Geoff for getting PlayStation. I mean, they weren't going to be at E3, but now they're going to be appearing at Summer Game Fest, so plus for Geoff. One notable exception, of course, is Nintendo, although Keighley has offered participation to any company that is interested in being at this event. In fact, the May 20 Inside Xbox event kicked off Summer Game Fest just last Thursday. They showcased a lot of third-party games that looked pretty cool, as well as Assassin's Creed Valhalla gameplay that was the big ticket item for the end of the show. Little actual gameplay was showed, resulting in backlash from fans. Game director Eshraf Ismail stated on Twitter, "You rightfully expected to see more today. We have a long marketing campaign ahead of us, and you will see more in-depth gameplay and get a lot more info about the game." So hopefully Assassin's Creed fans will get to see the gameplay that they want, and everybody can be very patient during this terrible, 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 terrible time. And honestly, a lot of pretty interesting third-party titles were showcased. I mean, that horror game Scorn looked pretty good. Albeit the quality of a lot of these games just didn't look as high as you would expect for it to be the next generation. It all sort of looked like stuff that could be on this generation. As always, thank you for tuning in to RRGN. If you have any thoughts about this week's events, please leave a comment. Don't forget to hit like if you like it. That really helps out a lot. And subscribe for more weekly roundups. And if you're interested in watching my other game-related content, I post videos on my private channel, RossyRoo, so follow that if you want. And that's all for today. See you next week.